The original Newcastle tram system shut down on the 10th of June 1950. In recent years, putting them back on the track has won plenty of support. Lord Mayor John Tate pushed the idea without success almost 10 years ago.
They run on the same gauge railway, but the Minister of Transport at the time said to me, not on, we're not going to use that sort of equipment for public transport.
Now a local not-for-profit group has done the sums and believes a modern tram train system developed in Germany and now proving popular in Adelaide can work in the Lower Hunter. The plan involves using trams on the Newcastle to Maitland track, as well as building new lines to locations in the inner city such as Derby Street, then eventually to outer suburbs and possibly Newcastle Airport.
90% of what we propose can be done on the existing rail network, and we'll only have to put in 10% of these tram lines.
Construction group GPT estimated it would cost $160 million to rip up the heavy rail line. The developers of this new plan believe the money would be better spent on improving, not removing.
Canberra has an infrastructure fund, and we're proposing infrastructure. We're not proposing to rip up infrastructure.
The tram train proposal also includes the installation of more level crossings in the inner city to make the harbour more easily accessible.
At a time when Hunter businesses are shedding staff, one company is opening the door to 250 employees. Australia's largest bus manufacturer, Volgren Australia, will establish its third factory at Tomago, drawing on local knowledge during the construction phase and beyond.
And there can be no better time to be building industrial buildings, no better time to be employing people than at the present economic time.
Volgren was awarded the $112 million contract in December to build 150 articulated vehicles or bendy buses for state transit. The chassis for the fleet will be imported from Europe, with the body to be designed, engineered and built at Tomago. Work will begin at a temporary site at Islington next week, with production to get underway here at Tomago in October.
We've got 22 local tradespeople already employed. 16 of those are currently undertaking training in Melbourne at our head office there, and we've just got 7 more people that have come on board today.
That number is expected to reach 250 when production is in full swing. The first instalment of 50 buses should be ready for action on Sydney roads by June next year. Colleen West, NBN News.
The mayors of Lake Macquarie and Newcastle came together to thank volunteers for their efforts, which helped to ned more than 32 tonnes of rubbish across the two cities. The fact more than 20 tonnes was collected at Belmont Wetlands was cause for concern.
Certainly the amount of rubbish that is still out there year after year says that there are some people in our community who are just grubs.
Greg Piper can't believe the measures people will take to dump rubbish, even though councils provide free large waste collections throughout the year.
Perhaps some people don't realise that they can actually have these things collected, but I think a lot of times people just don't want them hanging around their house. They've decided they're going to clean up and they're going to take the easiest possible route for them.
For Newcastle Council, the health of Throsby Creek is a major issue. Volunteers cleared bag after bag of waste from the mangroves yesterday, but they need help from people upstream.
It's not so much things that people have discarded at that point. They've discarded them in the streets, and the stormwater brings them down. Now, the tide takes them into the mangroves, and when the tide recedes, they stay in the mangroves.
Both mayors say it's disappointing to learn that some of the waste could have been recycled. Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
I'm just an everyday guy sort of thing that it needed to be done, so I just sort of did it, you know, and I'll do it again too, you know, and hopefully other guys will step in too and help if that situation comes again.
A car park transformed by compassion, mountains of boxes and bags bound for those in need. All morning, people came from around the lake, dropping off donations, clothes, linen, toys and toiletries, whatever they could give.
I get goosebumps thinking about it, you know. I just think these poor people down there, you know. We've got everything here and they've got nothing.
The appeal started in Lake Macquarie's schools and word quickly spread.
A lot of the kids went through their bedrooms and, you know, got their toys, and people that don't have the money wanted to give what they could get around their house, and yeah, just everyone wants to help.
Some parcels were beautifully wrapped, others marked with a personal message.
You know, good luck down there, we're thinking of you, you know, we're praying for you, and it's just for someone to open that box, it's just going to be, yeah, just going to be great for them.
With so much goodwill, getting the goods together was the easy part. Loading them onto a truck, hard yakka in today's heat. John Farraher donated the truck to take the huge haul to the Salvation Army's depot in Melbourne, from where the parcels will be distributed to 5 victims.
Time hasn't been kind, but momentum is certainly building for the Jets. While not ideal to have his 4 Socceroos away for the final week, he just hopes they arrive for the flight on Saturday uninjured, given he's already selected his squad for the ACL opener.
It's really made up our mind in regards to who's travelling and what shape to play.
He'll release the 17 later in the week, but the now former Adelaide defender Angelo Costanzo won't be going. In fact, he's still to reach Newcastle, given his A-League commitments with the Reds only concluded at the weekend.
He hasn't had any game time with his club, which has made it even more of an issue. So the lateness of him coming here is going to be very tough.
But Van Egmond has hinted on a few surprises, with Youth Team Player of the Year Brodie Moy under genuine consideration.
He's a big, strong boy, and he's really filling out, and his game's really improving as well. So, you know, he could be a bolter.
A new season, team and bike. Brock Parks is with Kawasaki's Superbike team, and if the opening round is anything to go by, it's not easy being green. To be fair, it's been a battle to get his bike ready, and after starting race 1 from 16th on the grid, he scooted into the top 10 over the opening laps. But clutch problems saw him back in the pits after 8. Race 2 was no easier. A poor start meant Parks drifted back in the field before eventually finishing 18th and out of the points. There's plenty to work on before the next race in Qatar. A range of Hunter Surf lifesavers will head to the National Championships in Western Australia with plenty of confidence after the state titles wrapped up at Swansea Belmont. The host club finishing 1-2 in the under-17s girls surf race, care of Kirsty Waugh and Eliza Smith. Redheads Hannah Tripaz claimed the 15s race thanks to a beach sprint to the line. While clubmate Isaac Morgan remains all the talk with his 7 gold medals and a bronze. Peter Scott had no luck in the men's ski final but still claimed silver. Dixon Park men's boat crew, though, would be ruining their race in the final of the surf boats, a bad start costing them any chance of a podium finish.
Hilary Allen's apartment overlooks the scenic Singleton Golf Course, but the other side of the building was today crawling with forensic crews searching for information about the woman's death. The place had not been ransacked and police say there are few signs of trouble, although the ambulance service reported blood inside Unit 5, where Ms Allen lived alone.
We haven't established exactly what's happened there at this stage, so the more examination we can conduct at the premises, the more chance we are of finding out exactly what happened.
Specialist teams from Newcastle and Sydney have been called in.
The crime scene people will be there, I anticipate, through this evening and maybe through the night and maybe again tomorrow morning.
A post-mortem examination was carried out today to try to determine how she died.
The deceased did have a laceration to the leg, and that is possibly one of the causes of a death here.
Police are appealing for anyone who's been in the Boonall Street area any time since Saturday afternoon to come forward, as they're unsure when the incident may have occurred.
And I believe that the relatives tried to contact her on the night before, on Sunday evening, and weren't able to do that.
They've also spoken to neighbours but haven't received any leads. Penny Evans, NBN News.
Heard a bit of commotion out the street, then got back to bed, then a couple minutes later heard 3 gunshots.
The sign is long gone from the facade of Showcase Cinemas. The doors are locked and the owners, Theo and Margaret Gumas, are heartbroken.
You just feel so sad. And not only for us, the whole of the city has rallied around.
Last Friday, Theo and Margaret heaved a sigh of bitter disappointment as GPT announced it would delay its redevelopment of the Newcastle Mall. That means the former cinema could sit idle for many years to come, when it could have been operating.
So that's where the frustration was, that we're out and no plans for the city.
Showcase was closed in May last year. They were ordered out by the building's owner, GPT, due to fire safety regulations.
The fire safety concerns were not within Showcase. They were in the building next door. And so we had asked them, well, can't you fix that so that we can stay?
That was too expensive for GPT, and now any hopes of reopening have been dashed as everything had to be sold.
If the cinema had his equipment and furnishings and so on, we'd do it tomorrow morning.
Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
According to residents, South Street Windale has looked like this for more than 6 weeks.
It's a health risk, it's embarrassing, it's dangerous. What can you do?
The site became an unofficial dump, but it wasn't just people who live nearby who were adding to the pile.
The cars are coming around the corner and just throwing their rubbish here. Once you get one little pile, it just goes like that. And look what the result is.
Lake Macquarie Council conducts free bulk waste collections in 22 areas twice a year. Some reports suggested garbage collectors were refusing to handle this load because it contained household waste and possibly syringes. Council staff say that wasn't the case.
We have staff on site today as per our normal collection pickup as per our website, and we will be in and out of that street by noon today.
As promised, the cavalry arrived on cue and the site was cleared. The Director of Operations believes residents in this part of Windale simply put their waste out too early.
The residents at Windale predominantly do the right thing. This is just an unfortunate situation and it's one that's unacceptable for any part of our city.
Council says it will now work with other government agencies to ensure this doesn't happen again. Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
The state government has streamlined the service responsible for looking after farmers and their animals, but Upper Hunter MP George Sourus argues it's more than just a name change.
I'm pleased to say I and the Coalition voted against that because the consequences that we're now seeing are the ones we're not happy about.
Those working within the sector are adjusting to the new boundaries and roles.
But at the moment we're just sitting on the fence, business as usual till they sort it all out. So it's a bit awkward for us.
Previously, our region included the Maitland, Hunter and Mudgee Merriwall Rural Lands Protection Boards. Now the lines aren't so clear. The state government divided the lower Hunter along the course of the Hunter River. So even though one farmer may own both sides of the river, their property now belongs to two very different districts. The northern bank belongs to Mid Coast, while this side is part of Cumberland, which stretches all the way to Sydney.
It's what happens when a merger goes too far. The districts become mega districts and they don't relate to each other. There's no commonality.
The government says frontline staff and all local officers have been maintained during the restructure. Penny Evans, NBN News.
They may have been killing a plant that they didn't need to kill, or they may have missed a plant that perhaps they should have been trying to kill.
Classes resumed as normal at Floraville Public today, but yesterday the school's emergency lockdown procedure was in place following the attempted abduction of a 12-year-old girl. Around 10:20, the student entered a toilet block and was confronted by a man in his 30s.
He was in the toilet block prior to the student entering and has grabbed hold of the student upon her entering the toilet block. She fortunately was able to struggle and get away from his hold and raise the alarm with teachers.
Fortunately, the girl wasn't injured. The man fled into nearby bushland. Police spent today speaking to the 12-year-old and piecing together the incident. They believe the man they're looking for is about 183 centimetres tall with black shoulder-length hair. He has a beer belly and markings on his arms and legs. The Department of Education says every parent with a child at the school has been informed. Neighbouring schools have also been advised and are being encouraged to reinforce the stranger danger message. Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
When we first met Leanna and sister Bethany in 2005, they were playing in their backyard with their pet bunnies and new toys. The family was making an urgent appeal for support to send the girls to France for treatment. The sisters have dystonia, a rare condition which attacks the brain, leaving limbs stiff and the body twisted. Fast forward 4 years, the girls have since made 15 trips to France, and now they must leave their school friends behind and pack their bags again, as 14-year-old Leanna needs urgent care.
Bethany is going to have firstly checkups, make sure everything's working all right, the stimulation, everything like that. Leanna over here, she needs urgent operation to change the batteries and possibly leads as well.
In France, the best paediatric neurosurgeon implanted batteries in the girls' stomachs, which send impulses to the brain via titanium wires. It's a treatment called DBS, or deep brain stimulation.
DBS is the best way of keeping them alive. If we didn't have that, both the girls would be dead.
Today, a small group of students from Bethany's school, Garden Suburb Primary, gave them a send-off with handmade cards and well wishes.
This public school has been excellent. They've been over backwards trying to help us.
Over the years, hundreds of people have helped to raise money for their medical trips to France, including this 3-day fundraising walk from Raymond Terrace to Singleton. Anyone wishing to help can go to our website for more information. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
It's been a whirlwind few days for Angelo Costanzo, who was in Melbourne at the weekend for the A-League Grand Final, packed his gear in Adelaide yesterday, flew to Sydney this morning before driving up the freeway. The last leg of what's been a long journey to start his new life as a Newcastle Jet.
I fell out of favour there with Vidi for the last few months, so I just want to get back playing again. And like I said, we've got an important chapter now for Newcastle Jets.
And he's just clocked on for work. Less than 2 hours after arriving, he met his new teammates before suiting up in Jets colours for the first time, ahead of tonight's hit-out against NBN League team Hamilton. Given an injury to fellow defender Lubo Milicevic, he's now in the frame for the club's first ACL game in Beijing next week, but he must prove his fitness tonight, having not played top-flight football for months.
I've been playing in the youth team, and Adelaide's probably not up to the standard of the A-League, but still you're still playing matches. So, but I'm not 100% match fit, like I said. But yeah, I'm not far from there.
As for the Jets away on Socceroos duty, it's still unclear how many of the four will actually get a run against Kuwait on Thursday night. Matt Thompson and Tarek Elrich, along with Nikolai Topor-Stanley, are all in the mix. Ben Kedarovsky just happy to be there. After being named Newcastle's best player of the season, the 17-year-old is rubbing shoulders with the Socceroos before he heads to Beijing for the ACL. Not bad for a boy also studying for the HSC. Jim Callanan, NBN News.
First and foremost, you want to keep the kids active, but also you want to, as I said, broaden their minds a bit and show them that there are other things out there. It does reinforce to you these sort of awards that you know you are on the right track and you're doing a good job for the kids.
Mrs. Allen's family today released this photo of the dead woman in the hope it might encourage any witnesses to come forward. Police have spoken to a number of nearby residents and are now examining whether the suspicious death could be connected to about half a dozen robberies around Boonall Street since Friday night.
We'd like to speak to anybody who saw Mrs. Allen at any stage over the weekend. Certainly anybody that has any information in relation to any premises that were broken into. Anybody seen acting suspiciously, anybody loitering on the street in the Singleton town area.
Yesterday's post-mortem examination revealed Mrs. Allen died of blood loss from a cut on her leg, but after 2 days of forensic investigations, police say they're no closer to determining how she got that injury.
They are still conducting their examination, they're collecting exhibits and they are yet to be examined.
The time of death also remains unknown. Although she was found by her son on Monday morning, the family last spoke to Mrs. Allen on Saturday afternoon.
Mrs. Allen was basically a home person and we haven't been able to establish her movements past Sunday morning.
Penny Evans, NBN News.
Around 8 o'clock this morning, the two vehicles were travelling north along the F3 freeway when the incident occurred about 1 kilometre south of the Morisset interchange. Police interviewed several witnesses at the scene, but at this stage aren't sure what went wrong.
One was a light tipper loaded with second-hand crushed up concrete, and one was a small sedan. Some stage those vehicles have come together, causing the tip truck to roll.
The sedan, driven by an 18-year-old woman, swerved left and slammed into the guardrail. The truck veered right and, after clearing a path through the trees on the median strip, eventually rolled, trapping the 72-year-old male driver. Police were joined at the scene by SES volunteers, rural firefighters and the Volunteer Rescue Association. Crews worked for more than 4 hours to free the man, who suffered severe damage to both of his legs.
The female was released immediately at the scene. She was not trapped. She was also conveyed to the John Hunter Hospital with minor injuries.
Traffic slowed to a crawl throughout the morning before vehicles were diverted onto alternative roads. Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
Environmentalists hoped fault lines through the proposed dam site would show logic for the 450 billion litre water storage was faulty. But Water Minister Philip Costa says the safety debate is now over, today releasing a geotechnical report and independent peer review that shows the site is stable.
I think it's reassuring for the whole community.
While the $1.5 million investigation identified several faults in the area, they are not considered a threat. The international experts empanelled by the government also concluded extra work won't be needed to shore up the site, so the $406 million budget is on target.
It certainly reaffirms the safety of the proposed dam site and in particular the rim.
Originally, Hunter Water had hoped the whole project would have been approved by now, but delays with federal government advice on threatened wetlands has again put back the completion of the environmental assessment, which was meant to be lodged last June. However, the corporation still expects to start construction next year.
So we're still continuing with detailed design for the dam, and that will continue through to the end of this year.
Penny Evans, NBN News. Lockouts, early closure times, covert operations and a greater police presence. They're just some of the strategies in place to combat this kind of behaviour.
We're certainly making a difference, considering where we've come, particularly in the last 12 months. Is it enough? Well, I'd say certainly there's still room for significant improvement.
And residents agree.
The absolute imperative is for the police to switch their focus away from putting costly band-aid on the consequences to dealing with the fundamental causes of the problem of excessive intoxication, binge drinking and failed responsible service of alcohol.
He also wants publicans to stop intoxicated people from entering hotels in the first place and believes a class action against all late trading hotels will help the Director of Liquor and Gaming intervene. In the meantime, police and licensees are looking at other strategies, including banning repeat offenders from pubs.
Now, what was discussed with Accord members at our recent meeting last Monday was the possibility of the Accord members actually, if you're banned from one licensed establishment, you'll be banned from all.
Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
It's a lesson like no other. The Roadwise program brings emergency service personnel and relatives of crash victims into the schoolyard to talk to senior students. The results speak for themselves.
You know, you just got to be safe, you got to be careful and just follow the road rules.
Included in the 4-hour-long road safety program, visual impairment goggles, which simulate what it's like to be drunk and how it affects the body. It's proved very effective.
Even a tiny bit of
you
alcohol,
can't walk straight.
Yeah, exactly.
Like imagine driving. Like if you can't physically walk in a straight line.
Among the speakers, Michelle Davis, who lost her 2 sons in a crash at Morpeth in 2005. She's determined to save other parents from the heartache and has developed the program to what it is today.
About 6 months after that, I did my first talk for 2 lone police officers who were doing a small Roadwise program in a community hall. They said to me one day, "We wish this program had legs," and that's all I needed. It gave me some purpose.
And the kids, many of whom are learning to drive, are listening and learning from her experience.
It was heart-wrenching, but it was a big reality check, and I just watched as people around me just, they broke down.
Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
The Barcelona backdrop makes this dive in 2003 hard to forget, but Matthew Helm had little time for sightseeing. He was too busy winning.
To go away to a World Championships and come back with a gold and a silver, you know that you're up there matching it with the best athletes in the world. So I do look back at that time with very fond memories.
Olympic silver and bronze medals followed in Athens, and the lure of individual gold pushed him all the way to Beijing. But when he returned without one, then missed the Nationals, the 10-metre platform specialist had the chat with Dad back home in Newcastle.
Come out of the lounge room about an hour and a half later and said, "I can't do any better than that. That's it." He retired. So I said, well, now you can go and earn a living.
The 28-year-old is now doing just that on a 2-year scholarship with the Australian Sports Commission to become a coach based in Brisbane.
It's just so rewarding to be able to do that and see the changes in those athletes, and that to me is worth more than money, than gold medals, than anything.
The move to mentor rounds out almost 2 decades of competition since winning his first dive as an 11-year-old. With a background in gymnastics, the switch to diving would be a natural one for Matthew. His first coach, Eric Brooker, says he saw his potential from day one.
When he first waltzed into Lambton Pool back in the early 90s, it was a dancing trip down over the turnstiles all the way down to the pool, very enthusiastic.
Such enthusiasm got him through the scores of injuries which plagued his career, and Brooker believes, without doubt, Helm is the best diver this country has ever produced.
He had a lot of natural flair and talent. You know, he's a very aesthetic diver. Even from back then you could see the potential was there to have greatness.
Adam McKilrick, NBN News. Barely in the city 12 hours, the now former Reds defender pulled on Jets colours for the first time last night, given just the one trial match to prove he's up to the rigours of an ACL campaign.
I'm ready to play and I'm looking forward to it. Like I said before, hopefully I do play. I want to play.
The challenge now, to start learning more about his teammates.
We get to go away, so I get to meet most of the players and mingle with them and living with them. That's the way you get to meet everyone. So, I'm looking forward to that and getting away to Beijing.
There he'll meet Joel Griffiths, the Jets marquee on loan to the Chinese Super League club, and in different circumstances would have been playing alongside, not against.
He's one of my hardest opponents, so we'll be up against him again. But the good thing is that we know what to expect from Joel, so we know his weaknesses and his strengths.
Costanzo played all 90 minutes against State League side Hamilton Olympic. The A-Leaguers didn't have it all their way despite the 4-0 win, with Sasho Petrovski among the goal scorers. Adam McIlrick, NBN News.
This is just seconds after the footbridge in Maitland came down on one of the busiest sections of the New England Highway. 2 trucks crushed, one truckie still inside. Amazingly, he was okay. Both drivers were taken to hospital in Newcastle suffering minor injuries. The distraught driver of the low loader couldn't believe it. Newcastle businessman George Liolio was driving this 4-wheel drive at the speed limit of 80 kilometres an hour with no chance to stop and nowhere to swerve as the bridge flipped over and crashed down.
As it took it down, we were 20 feet away from it coming in the opposite direction. Yeah. And as it fell in front of us, it sort of rolled, and luckily the cage come down first and we went straight through it.
He and 2 passengers escaped almost unharmed, just some cuts from the shattered windscreen.
We were fine. We sat there for a while, took stock of ourselves, dusted ourselves off. We have glass all over us, and then we were thankful that we were all okay.
Although stunned no one on the road was killed, police were playing it cautious until the wreckage could be moved in case a pedestrian had been on the overpass when the accident occurred. A combined school swimming carnival was underway just around the corner. The students used the bridge to get to and from school.
We're very thankful that we believe at this stage no one has been seriously injured or killed. I describe that as miraculous because it's unusual for this pedestrian overpass to have no traffic whatsoever at that time of day.
The last man across the Devonshire Street footbridge was Ron Olive. He uses the pathway every day as a shortcut to the park.
I might have been laying underneath all that rubble over there.
And how does that make you feel?
A little bit shock in the heart.
He'll walk the long way around to the pub tonight to celebrate his luck with a few cold ones.
Well, I'm going out to the club tonight. I'm going to have 3 schooners.
Nearby residents thought the noise was 2 coal trains colliding. They're not surprised by today's accident. With only a 2.8 metre clearance, large trucks often have to slow down to make sure they fit under.
It's been an accident waiting to happen, yeah.
With peak hour looming, a clean-up plan was hatched to clear at least one direction to allow diverted traffic through. Late this afternoon, heavy machinery was called in to lift the bridge onto the westbound lanes.
If we can achieve that, the structure will then be cut into a number of pieces whilst on the eastbound lanes and open up the highway in its entirety. This could take up to 12 hours.
Pedestrians, meanwhile, will have to rely on the 2 other local overpasses. Penny Evans, NBN News.
It's been complete since June last year, but the $1.7 million multi-purpose centre at Fort Scratchley is still sitting idle. The function centre was built by the federal government to provide a revenue stream for the fort, but council is dragging the chain.
Feel a certain amount of frustration that those premises are not in use because they're completed.
Newcastle City Council is working on the catering contract, which should be complete next month, while it also needs to meet several DA conditions, including some road changes.
They're minor things, but they seem to be taking an inordinate amount of time. They do have to do with landscaping and lighting and things such as that.
In Newcastle West, another frustration continues for the Lord Mayor, with the dilapidated former Empire Hotel still standing, despite a demolition order by the Land and Environment Court last year.
What the owners did was put in a Section 96 application to council to vary their development approval, which had been some 12 months old or so, and that put everything on hold again.
And another summer has passed, and Dixon Park Surf Club still hasn't got an answer on its plans to open a cafe or kiosk. Council is, however, currently constructing a new shelter, a playground and seating at the park. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News. Gyms wouldn't be gyms without music to motivate members.
Go to a group exercise class without music, there is just no atmosphere and you just can't do the moves.
Fitness centre operators have always had to pay copyright fees, but they're set to rise dramatically. That will result in an increase in membership fees, and they claim that could even put some fitness centres out of business.
Well, it'll be an additional $90,000 cost to this gym and we'll have no option but to pass it on to the members.
Currently, fitness centres pay 96 cents per class to the Phonographic Performance Company of Australia, or PPCA, which represents the interests of record labels and recording artists. But the organisation wants $4.54 per member per month, regardless of whether that member takes part in group exercise classes.
It's going to just put an extra burden on us, I guess, financially, unfortunately. But it's just one we're just going to have to absorb if that's the case.
The PPCA does not believe the current rate is fair, saying it does not reflect the true value that recorded music adds to the business of a fitness centre. A petition has been set up on a website for people to register their opposition to the fee hike. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
Ryan Tompkins died in August 2007 at the age of just 19. His mother, Lenore Miller, says her son's asthma was managed and he was healthy. That was until he stopped taking his medication, which later became painfully clear he so desperately needed.
After a lifetime of taking medication, you start thinking that you don't need it anymore or that it doesn't work, and he'd had actually run out of his Preventer a couple of weeks before.
Ryan would have been 21 on Monday, and to mark the occasion, Miss Miller has set up a website on which people can donate to the Asthma Foundation.
It's great to see people being willing to support us in that way and to commemorate Ryan's 21st by contributing money that will go towards asthma research and certainly asthma awareness programs in schools.
Experts have reinforced the need for every asthmatic to have an action plan to help control the disease.
A written asthma action plan needs to be a contract between your GP and the patient.
1 in 10 Australian adults has asthma. For children, it's 1 in 9. Researchers say they are among the highest rates in the developed world. And despite the prevalence of the disease, some cases continue to baffle the experts.
Viral infections, how they both can cause asthma, but also how they may worsen asthma in those who already have it as well. And these are areas that we still don't have any specific treatments for, unfortunately.
Adam McIlwright, NBN News. Ask the Nicholsons about their morning and you'll know why they named their new son Jet.
He was coming. There was no question. There was no stopping it. It was just, he was on his way and that was it.
On their way from Salamander Bay, it became evident an ambulance was needed, and so they waited at a Williamtown service station halfway to Newcastle's John Hunter Hospital. Attendant Matt Alcorn was just finishing night shift right about the time Emma's water broke. in the car wash bay.
Had a gentleman walk into the shop and he said, "Have you guys got any blankets?" And we said, "Well, why?" And he goes, "Well, my daughter's having a baby out in the car wash." And we're going, what?
What happened next? Matt lent the Nicholsons his jacket. The paramedics arrived to perform the perfect delivery while still en route to hospital.
Once the little fella was born, everything, big weight lifted off everyone's shoulders, and I'm just proud of Emma. She done well.
For Jet's big sister, her dilemma is what to tell the teacher for having the day off school.
I was at the hospital because the baby came out. The ambulance.
The family praised the paramedics and in all the fuss forgot to thank the service station workers.
We still have the man's jacket. I don't even know what his name is, but
We'll wash it up and return it to him.
we will wash it up for him and gladly give it back to him.
And so Matt will get his keepsake of the birth, but there's no topping theirs. Adam McIlrick, NBN News.
He was predicted as a bolter for the Jets Asian Champions League squad. Today, Brodie Moy's place in the 17 was confirmed by Gary Van Egmond.
He's got himself very physically strong and fit, and he's doing very well on the pitch. So, yeah, we think he can do a job for us over there.
The teenager, who only finished high school last year, says he wasn't expecting the honour, having spent most of the season in the youth league side. He's quickly being made to feel at home in the top squad.
Blokes like Lubo and Adam Griffiths and that, they try and help you out. They try and tell you what you should be doing and that, so they're pretty good in that sense.
In the end, there were few surprises, even though Jets fans may not recognise a host of these names. The coach says Marco Jesic was the only player knocking on the door of selection who missed out. Returning from injury, he's still lacking match fitness.
Young Jessic, he's coming back, and we know he's got a lot of good qualities, and we're looking even to try and use him off the bench as an impact player, but he's still not ready.
Angelo Costanzo has only played in Jets colours once, in a trial game against Hamilton on Tuesday. His experience earned him a seat on the plane to China.
We just needed to see where his fitness was, and that was fine, as we saw against Hamilton, and he'll travel.
The Jets' 4 Socceroos have all been named, but Pim Verbeek is yet to say if any will play against Kuwait tonight. Mitchell Hughes, NBN News. The Big Show fundraiser has taken plenty of body blows before today. Originally set to be staged at the Newcastle Basketball Stadium, the event was forced to move to Newcastle Panthers. Stockton's Daniel Armand was due to fight Jamie Withers in the main event, but injury forced the Sydney-sider to withdraw. The Raging Bull Gordon Tallis also dropped out. The show was set to go on until Armand's new opponent Dominic Vey also pulled out.
I was called up on Tuesday and were told that Dommy can't box because he's got a back injury. I've been looking for replacements for him and we just can't find one.
No main event and sluggish ticket sales forced organiser Tony Butterfield to throw in the towel.
We're really left with no choice but to postpone the night. It's something that we're very, very disappointed about. Myself and my partners and many other people around Newcastle have put in an enormous amount of work to get this fundraiser up.
Adding insult to injury, Dominic Vey's camp has suggested the fight take place in Sydney in 3 weeks.
Daniel's peaked now, he's ready to go now. And if his back's that bad, maybe it'll be bad again in 3 weeks' time, just before the fight.
Armand is furious he's been left without a bout. And will now look overseas for his next opponent. Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
The Parish family is in such a rush. Even 2-year-old Cahill is helping out as Mum and Dad look for another place to live, given just 1 week's notice to move out.
Of that 7 days, I've got 4 days of 12-hour shifts. There's not a lot I can do in that, which really leaves me effectively 3 days to find a new home for the family and move.
Simply not long enough to pack a house, move a house, find a house and clean a house.
Tenants are normally given 21 days to leave, 30 in some cases, but the Parishes, a family of 5 and at least another in the Corlett complex, were given their marching orders yesterday.
It's not through any fault of ours. It's not like we've defaulted on our rent or anything. It's unfortunately the landlord can't pay their mortgage.
Several mortgagees are involved and some units are already up for sale. What makes this process harder to accept for the residents issued 7-day notices in this building is that other tenants, neighbours, are being allowed to stay on while their units are being sold.
We're willing to pay rent, we're willing to stay here and pay the rent, but they don't want it. They just want it vacant and empty and no money coming in. It doesn't seem logical.
Adam McIlwright, NBN News.
These are the first designs released of the planned airport expansion, which will more than double the size of the existing terminal. It will see the current domestic terminal extended to the east and the creation of 880 new car park spaces.
It's basically to include a whole new terminal to handle international arrivals and departures, as well as increasing our domestic capacity for years to come.
Despite the economic downturn, Newcastle Airport is taking off, with last year's passenger figures up 13% on the previous year. And given the record passenger numbers and a likely increase in destinations, possibly even Kuala Lumpur, Newcastle Airport is very much a work in progress.
And our master plan forecasts longer-term growth for both domestic growth in terms of new destinations and the like, and potentially for international traffic, say for New Zealand and maybe in the longer term into Asia.
The airport today lodged a development application with Port Stephens Council and hopes to begin construction next year. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News. It was an emotional unveiling, prompting applause and tears with the model of the SS Iron Knight, a BHP steamer, finally where it belongs.
The Iron Knight was torpedoed on the night of the 8th of February 1943, about 18 miles out from Montague Island on the south coast. 36 of its crew went down with the ship.
Just 14 people survived. Today, relatives of the crew crowded around to see the model of the ship, among them Ella Jordan and Mike Lobley, whose relative Ron Jordan died at the age of 22.
It's beautiful to see it. It's very, very sad. And it's like a funeral. We're finally giving him a funeral.
The original builder's model has been in storage in Melbourne. Today it was handed over by BHP Billiton.
Here it's meaningful. So many of the crew of the Iron Knight, so many of the casualties of BHP ships and merchant marine generally were from Newcastle. Newcastle has always been a major port and a major seafarers' centre.
The Iron Knight was torpedoed by the same submarine which shelled Newcastle in 1942. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
The glow of oxy-torches replaced headlights on the normally busy stretch of the highway last night as workers cut the footbridge into pieces to be carted away for inspection by the RTA. One westbound lane was open by 7:30 p.m. and the highway was completely back in business by 11:30, 12 hours after the accident. Today, traffic flowed freely. This damaged pylon one of the few reminders of yesterday's near miss for motorists. Police have spoken to the driver of the low loader that was carrying the cherry picker that clipped the bridge, but won't comment on the possibility of charges being laid until the truck has been examined. Locals say it's another graphic example of why the F3 link to Branxton needs to be built.
I think the thing's been studied to death, and the result of every study seems to be that there needs to be an alternative around Maitland.
This is the next overpass up from where yesterday's accident occurred. The bridge is highly flexible. You can feel it move when heavy vehicles pass underneath or pedestrians walk over it.
The bridge, of course, is constructed to Australian standards, and it's our understanding that this particular type of incident is quite rare.
A similar collapse occurred at Port Stephens in 1995 when an excavator got wedged under a footbridge, bringing it down onto traffic, again thankfully without serious injury or loss of life.
When you paint your house, you put a ladder up one side and a ladder up the other side and you put the plank across. That's the same sort of structure, so that it spans across from one side to the other.
The RTA says it's not concerned about the safety of the two other Maitland overpasses and is looking at options to replace the Devonshire Street footbridge. Penny Evans, NBN News.
It's at the Williamtown RAF base where you really can appreciate just how far military aircraft have come since the Avenger torpedo bomber was built in 1944.
What sort of an aircraft is it like to fly?
Well, it's a bit of a truck really, but I mean, having said that, it's very, very stable. So once you get it in the cruise mode, it'll just sit there.
Phil Frawley should know he flew the 65-year-old aircraft from Coolangatta to the Hunter.
Consumes about 340 litres of aviation gasoline per hour and 1.2 gallons of oil per hour. So
it's quite thirsty.
It is very thirsty aeroplane, yeah. It's not cheap to run, that's for sure.
The reason its wings were designed to fold in and out was to help with storage on aircraft carriers. The Avenger made for an imposing sight for any enemy.
Somebody coined the phrase, that is a big mother of an aeroplane, so we couldn't be so cruel as to call it that, so we just call it Big Mama.
And the grand old girl still has the wings to keep flying. She's set to spend her semi-retirement in Cessnock as the feature of a new aviation museum. Adam McKilrick, NBN News.
There's always a good mood at the start of a season, and Knights players are promising plenty in 2009. There's plenty of nervous anticipation behind the scenes as well, given the current economic climate.
We've just got to be very tight in our spending, watch what we do, market ourselves correctly and rely on our sponsors and our supporters.
The latter will prove harder this season due to the construction of the second new grandstand at Energy Australia Stadium. Given the expected impact on crowds, season ticket holders and other game day issues, there are already moves to ensure the bottom line is protected.
We've obviously made Hunter Venues aware of our problems, and they've made us aware of their problems in the construction zone. I think the thing that comes out of it is that we're both working closely together. We both have a common goal.
As for the team for the first game on March 15 against the Titans, it will be released next Tuesday. But Ben Rogers remains on track for a start in the number 6 jumper. One certain to be there is Kurt Gidley, who'll start his first year as captain and wants to end it in the finals.
It'd be nice to make the semis, in the first year of being captain, and I'm sure for a lot of these younger guys who haven't played semis, it's a real buzz and something's contagious, and you'd like to be there each year.
You couldn't just feel the tension at training, you could see it and definitely hear it. Everyone just wants to play in the Asian Champions League, especially Ljubo Milicevic. He's certainly made an impact since arriving in Newcastle, and if his passion is contagious, then the Jets will be full of it come kick-off.
We've been training pretty hard for a month now, and we can't wait just to get over there and finally play a game that matters.
Fighting back from both injury and oppression, Milicevic is the cornerstone of a rebuilt defensive line that now boasts size and power, something the coach plans to use.
Got some real men around the joint now, so I don't think anyone's going to boss us around the park. If we are physical, they don't like it, but again, it's not to go overboard. We must keep our discipline as well.
It's playing against brothers Joel and Ryan for the first time that Adam Griffiths is coming to terms with, something he never thought possible only weeks ago.
It's going to be a strange moment, I suppose, when we first walk out of the field and I see him on the other side of the field with my other brother.
Australian defender Matt Thompson will join his club mates on the flight to Beijing tomorrow as their captain. And in more big news for the Jets, Socceroo Scott Chipperfield will meet with Newcastle owner Con Constantine in the city within the month as negotiations to gain his services for the next 2 A-League seasons continue.
Now, I can't tell you when, but it's definitely coming over to Newcastle to see what Newcastle's got to offer. So that's a big plus.
It's understood a price has been agreed on, with Chipperfield wanting to see the Newcastle lifestyle firsthand. Jim Callanan, NBN News.